Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, those following us via social media, and members of the media. Welcome to this public meeting, number 20 of today, Wednesday, August 16th, 2023. I would like to give a special welcome to the Minister of Finance, Mr. Artwell Irian, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 12 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have received notice of absence from our chairman, MP Bijlani, who is still away for medical treatment, and the latest report is that he's recovering finally, but no date yet to return. It is important to note that this meeting was scheduled to be held today at 10 o'clock, however, could not be held due to 9 o'clock. Initially at 9 o'clock, then rescheduled to 10 o'clock, and could not be held at 10 due to a lack of quorum. Does any member of Parliament at this time have any notification? I see MP Rolando Bryson, then MP Okay, MP Christophe Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Mr. Speaker, good morning to you. Thank you very much. Good morning to the Honourable Minister and his support staff, my colleagues, and everyone who's watching and listening via the means. Mr. Chairman, I have two notifications, so if I would beg your indulgence. The first one, Minister, is basically informing, because I would like to know myself if that is the case, if it can be done. Then I think it's something that the whole community and the government should take into consideration. I heard the Prime Minister make mention of the committee that puts in place the names or requests for individuals to be knighted. And she said the community or individuals can send in names. I am asking, because I don't know, if individuals who have passed away can be knighted. If yes, then if that is the case, Mr. Chairman, here on the floor of Parliament, I would like to put forward the name of, we all know, Roberto Celestino Arundel, because I believe his name will be talked about, spoke about for many years to come, should also be considered for a knighthood, if it is possible. That's what I'm asking, if someone who have passed away, if their names can be put forward to be knighted. If that is the case, I would like to propose his name, Mr. Chairman. So that's one notification that I have. And also, Mr. Chairman, I've taken notice of a public notice that came out on the 7th of August from the Ministry of Justice. And many people have called me in relations to what happened today. Mr. Chairman, the first notice on the 7th of August came out where the Minister and the Ministry of Justice said, renew your expired Sint Maarten driver's license now. And it goes on to say, the Honourable Minister of Justice, Anna E. Richardson, is pleased to announce a one-time opportunity to renew your expired Sint Maarten driver's license. If your license has been expired for more than 1 year, hence I stressed on that, this is your chance to get back on the road legally. And in that notification, Mr. Chairman, she has what's included: waive Sint Maarten driver's test, 400 guilders in value, pay only a processing fee of 200 guilders, visit the receiver's office, administration building, and it goes on and it goes on. It says documents required: expired Sint Maarten driver's license, medical doctor, valid ID. And today, Mr. Chairman, when it's supposed to commence, when it's supposed to start, which is on the 16th of August, a new release came out last night and was given to the people of Sint Maarten today. It says, public notice Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. In light of the Minister of Justice announcement grace period regarding the issuance by means of renewal of expired driver's license, please be advised as follows. 1, for the period of 3 months commencing on August 16, 2023 until October the 11th, 2023, driver's license that have been expired for a period not exceeding 5 years are eligible for renewal as per Article 104 of the Traffic Ordinance. Now, Mr. Chairman, in your first notice you said 1 year or more, 1 year. So if it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15, you said it. You came out with it. You published it. The ministry did that, Mr. Chairman. You give expectations to the people of St. Maarten, to the general public, that if your driver's license 1 year or more has been expired, you give that expectation. Now today, when everyone is supposed to come, bring their documents for this process to start, now you put a limit saying, look, listen, it's 5 years. Mr. Chairman, you can't make these things up. If is the case, then the minister should have done the due diligence to know what the article says, know what the ordinance is all about, and then release this information. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say to the Minister of Justice, she needs to review this, go back over it, and stick to what was first put out. I thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Christophe Emmanuel. The next speaker, MP Sarah Westcott Williams. MP, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to make a few brief remarks during the point for notifications. A good morning to my colleagues, a good morning to our support staff, a word of welcome to the Minister and his support staff. The Minister of Finance is here with us this morning to start on the first agenda point, which is the annual financial statements of the country for 2021. A good morning to all tuned in to this public meeting of Parliament. Mr. Chairman, since it was so meticulously announced who was here and who was not at the time scheduled for this meeting to eventually start, let me make it quite clear. This meeting first convened with 3 agenda points, including, for me, the most important one, the final indexation of the pensions of the people of St. Maarten. We have the annual account 2021, and I'll get into that under that agenda point. And then we had one regarding the cinema ordinance. That would have been number 2. That was excluded from the agenda, and the meeting that had to start at 9, we were informed at 11 minutes past 9 that the meeting was to start 10 o'clock. The picture that is now on social media of the members of the opposition here in the hall waiting. 10 o'clock came. That picture was taken 6 minutes after 10. Not a word, not even an indication to the members sitting in here of, we're going to get there, but we are to sit here and witness other members of Parliament sitting in the press room and having a discussion as if nothing is wrong. And we sit and we wait. And we sit and we wait. And then, when finally it was decided this meeting will start, then we hear, and unfortunately such a very important meeting on the annual account of 2021 and the changes to all of the different laws, and all of those changes have one thing to do, and that is change the way that the indexation on the pensions is calculated, period. Something that had the government not sought to do it themselves before and not wanting to change the law would have been done already. That's a fact. So, Mr. Chairman, let that be noted, because that kind of disrespect has to stop. Has to stop. But, Mr. Chairman, while I wanted to make that very clear, the reason I stood up during notifications was to extend heartfelt congratulations to former Prime Minister Leona Romeo with her appointment. With her appointment. What is the appointment? Not by the government of Sint Maarten, mind you. This appointment of former Prime Minister Leona Romeo, is won by the temporary work organization falling under the Kingdom Ministry of BZK to be the liaison for the execution of the country package. For the lack of a better word, I nearly wanted to say, how ironic. How ironic. But no, ironic is not the right word, because this St. Maarten lady, in her position as Prime Minister back then, was ridiculed, thrown under the bus over and over again. But today, others, BZK and the State Secretary, found in her the person to appoint as liaison for the temporary work organization, the Dutch organization that is supposed to monitor and control the country package to be executed by the government of St. Maarten. No, the word for that is definitely not ironic. It just shows what goes around comes around. Congratulations, Mrs. Romeo. And it just shows that with the strength of a woman, you can withstand the onslaughts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. I see we have another speaker, MP Rolando Bryson.
Mr. Chairman, good morning to you, the Secretary General, my colleague, members of Parliament, and the Honorable Minister and those signed in. You know, I try not to have to use the notifications the way others want to use it, let's say to make excuses for themselves. But I do at least need to address the point of the matter, Mr. Chairman. At the end of the day, every member of Parliament is responsible for whether they want to sign into a meeting or not. I did not ask any one of them here to sign in. And I can't say it's opposition, because you had some that did sign in. But what tends to happen, they have this knee-jerk reaction where they feel they need to poke something at the government when they don't realize you're not hurting the government, you're not hurting me. If you all don't want to continue with this meeting, then finally the solutions to our pension, finally having proper accountability, is not handled in this Parliament. Whatever reason it is or whatever excuse you want to give, that's what it comes down to. But Mr. Chairman, you have to understand there's some people here that are very shaky over the last few days. So I asked the people of Sint Maarten to bear with them a little bit. It's been a rough week for them. So in the meantime, for me, I'm going to sip on my real bush tea, get ready for the presentation, and do the people's work. I want to say a congratulations to the United People's Party, all its membership, and everyone who had a very successful Congress. Thank you all for what you have done, putting all the hard work together and the overwhelming support that we've had at that Congress. Thank you all for being there, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Rolando Bryson. I see there are no further requests for notifications. I would like to, from this end, extend condolences to the wife, the son and daughter of our dearly departed Roberto Celestino Arendel, well-known teacher, coach for the St. Maarten debate team in the High St. Richardson Educational Awareness Foundation that travels annually to different Caribbean islands, and this year had the distinct honor to return home with first place. Unfortunately, he was in Santo Domingo for one thing and ended up being rushed to hospital because of his diabetic condition. And one of the things I think was learned by family and dear friends in a very harsh way, that even though you are insured with SZV, if you don't have private insurance or travel insurance when you travel, or you don't have a big amount of cash on hand that you can deposit at a hospital, as the people say, crapo, smoke your pipe. The family was told in no uncertain way that SZV could not assist, and he just had to basically stay where he was and perish. I think it is regrettably, unfortunately, St. Maarten has indeed lost a great man who has served his country with honor, has served his country well, has served his country across lines. He did not see any distinction between students. Whatever school they were from, Roberto was there for them. He was an avid domino player, and the Colby boys, we were eventually converted into Arendelle homeboys because we played every week at his home, and that became the base. Since he was no longer living in Colby, that became the base of his domino team. He had been honored by them recently, and we believe once the body returns to St. Maarten, he will have a well-deserved burial, even though we can say gone way too soon. Rest in peace, my dear brother. We now continue with the meeting. The agenda points for this public meeting are: 1. Incoming documents. 2. Ontwerplandsverordening tot vaststelling van de jaarrekening van het land Sint Maarten voor het dienstjaar 2021. Landsverordening vaststelling jaarrekening 2021, ingekomen stuk 57 van het jaar 2022-2023. De dato 8 mei 2023, Zittingsjaar 2022-2023, stuk 167. In English, the draft national ordinance establishing the annual accounts of the country of St. Maarten for the financial year 2021, national ordinance on the adaptation of annual accounts 2021, incoming document 750 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023, dated May 8, 2023, document 167 of the current parliamentary year. Agenda point 3. Ontwerplandsverordening tot wijziging van de Landsverordening Algemene ouderdomsverzekering, de Landsverordening Algemene weduwen en wezenverzekering, Landsverordening minimumlonen, de Landsverordening ziekteverzekering en de Landsverordening ongevallenverzekering ter aanpassing van de peilperiode voor het prijsindexcijfer van de gezinsconsumptie ingekomen stuk 853 van het jaar 2020, 22, 2023, de dato 9 juni 2023 van het huidige Zittingsjaar stuk 168. Again in English, the draft national ordinance amending the National Ordinance on General Old Age Insurance, the National Ordinance on General Widows and Orphans Insurance, the National Ordinance on Minimum Wages, the National Ordinance on Health Insurance, and the National Ordinance on Accident Insurance to adjust the reference period for the price index of household consumption, incoming document 853 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023, dated June 9th, 2023, parliamentary year 2022-2023, document 168. We go over to agenda point 1, but before we do so, maybe it should have been on the announcements, but I am leaving today to Curacao for medical reasons. Before that, I have to make a stop at my doctor to change the bandage on my hand where I had a serious burn, so I won't be able to stay with you throughout the entire day. All members have received the list of incoming documents and the proposals for further handling. This you received in incoming document 696. Or rather, you have received incoming document 696 until incoming document 934 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023. Question is, are there any comments or proposals on the list as presented? There are none. So since there are no comments, the list and the proposals for handling are approved. We go over to agenda point 2, draft national ordinance establishing the annual accounts of the country of Sint Maarten for the financial year 2021. National ordinance on the adoption of annual accounts 2021. Incoming documents as stated before, 750 of the current parliamentary year dated May 8, 2023, document 167. The draft national ordinance establishing the annual accounts of the country of Sint Maarten for the financial year 2021 was received on May 8, 2023 by Parliament. A Central Committee meeting was subsequently held on June 23rd, 2023, on the subject matter in which the members of Parliament posed their questions and the Minister answered these questions. A report has been made on the deliberations in the Central Committee meeting and was sent to the government. The government answered this report with a so-called note following the final report, which was listed in incoming document 990 of the current parliamentary year, dated August 11th, 2023. All members have received a copy of the draft national ordinance and the note following the final report digitally via email. These documents can also be found in the Parliament General Team. At this time, I would first like to give the floor to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Mr. Artwell Irion, for his introductory remarks and or presentation. Minister of Finance, you have the floor.
Good morning. Good morning to the members of Parliament, the Kafir, support staff. Good morning to the people of Sint Maarten. I'll start directly with the presentation. I'm happy to be here today to present to you the audited financial statements of Sint Maarten for the year 2021. As you know, during my tenure as Minister of Finance, we managed to clean up the backlog on the financial statements of Sint Maarten. As promised, I intend to make sure that I do not create any more backlogs as Minister. When it comes to the quality of the financial statements, we know, just like the budget, that it is still a work in progress. However, we are happy that we can already see major improvements the last few years and will continue improving upon. During the presentation, I will discuss the following: the income statement and the balance sheet of 2021. I will highlight the significant differences in the balance sheet and the income statements compared to 2020. Besides this, I will also highlight the significant differences in the figures in the income statement compared to the approved 2021 budget. After that, we'll briefly give some insight on the audit reports received from the SWB and the audit chamber in regard to the 2021 financials, and we'll close off with a conclusion, as was done in the CC previously. 2021 was an uncertain year, as we had no idea how COVID would have impacted us. Based on this, we requested and received a deviation from the balanced budget requirement based on Article 25. The 2021 budget showed a negative result of 241 million guilders. However, our actuals of 2021 resulted in a negative result of 95 million guilders, which was a lot better than we anticipated. In total, we had a revenue of 429 million guilders and total expenses that amounted to 524 million guilders. When assessing the revenue, it is pretty much in line with our budget when the funds received from NRPB and the Netherlands of 53 million guilders is excluded. The actual revenue amounts to 376 million guilders compared to a budgeted amount of 372 million guilders. This is very good, as our aim is, of course, to have a realistic budget. With regards to the expenses, we can see that these were much lower than budgeted. This was mainly due to the COVID development, which led to less spending. When it comes to the balance sheet, I'm happy that a cleanup project, which was initiated in 2021, led to a huge improvement in the financial statements and also resulted in better disclosure information. We've highlighted the balance sheet items with the largest fluctuations in comparison to 2020. In comparison to 2020, the value of the vehicles increased with approximately 8 million guilders, which is mainly due to the transfer of vehicles received via the trust fund. This is part of the ERP1 project managed by the NRPB. The long-term receivables increased with 30 million compared to 2020, which is mainly caused by the loan received from the trust fund, which is in turn loaned to PGIA by the government of Sint Maarten. Thus, the increased receivable is the amount to be received in return from PGIA. Improvement disclosure debtors in the final statement for the year 2021. The disclosure has been improved. You can now clearly see the main outstanding receivable of government. In 2021, the main outstanding receivables were from ground lease, 90 million, lottery, and casinos. This is the main reasons I have focused on these measures to increase the collection of these old outstanding balances. The long-term debt increased with 170 million, of which 117 million relates to new COVID loans issued in 2021. And 50 million relates to a reclassification of a loan that had to be repaid but has been included in the refinancing of all COVID loans. As such, in 2021, this amount was reclassified to the long-term debt. The creditors decreased by 64 million. This decrease is mainly due to a decrease of 68 million in other creditors, offset by minor increases in other categories. This major decrease is an effect of the cleanup procedures executed in the financial administration, as the balance in previous years were overstated due to items not being matched and booked after payment. The short-term debt also decreased by 69 million guilders, which is also a result of the cleanup. 20 million relates to the decrease in accrued expenses and 20 million decrease in accrued COVID expenses. Highlight of the income statement. I've also highlighted the major adjustments in the income statement. The increase in revenue is a result of the inclusion of the 53 million funds which we received from the NRPB and the Netherlands. With regard to the NRPB, 32 million relates to the loan of PGIA and 7 million relates to the vehicles which we included in our administration. 10 million was received from the Netherlands in relation to the food voucher program which was executed by the SMDF. The decrease of 63 million guilders in goods and services is a result of the 70 million decrease in projects and activities as we were not able to execute all the budgeted projects. 11 million decrease in COVID-related expenses due to the decline of COVID in 2021. The actual subsidies and transfers is 59 million guilders lower than the budgeted amount, which is due to the decline in spending of 64 million guilders of the positive COVID and economic developments, which led to the payroll program ending in September 2021. Lastly, the 80 million impairment expense is mainly due to an impairment of 40 million on the valuation of the Sint Maarten Harbor holding due to a negative result in 2021, which of course was a result of the pandemic. The audit reports. On the 2021 financial statements, we again received a disclaimer of opinion on the true and fair view and the adverse opinion on compliance from SOAB. The main reason for this disclaimer is due to uncertainties in the audit which are mainly caused by deficiencies in the internal control processes, which we intend to address during the adoption of the new financial statement and updated processes. The audit chamber executed their audit as well. They commented on the fact that when offsetting the underspending and overspending, there's an underspending of the budget of 146 million guilders. However, they emphasized adjustment through the budget amendments to prevent overspending on certain line items. Unfortunately, the current process of budget amendments is very long. This process is also being reviewed to be shortened. We will then be able to have more budget amendments during the year. Both SOAB and the audit chamber stated that there is improvement in the audit information provided and in the quality of the financial statements, and our aim is to continue improving. I would like to close with the mission of the Ministry of Finance. Our mission is to efficiently oversee the country's finances by adopting new methods and technology to improve, standardize, streamline, and automate processes. In addition, to provide accountable advice to the government in its policy areas and execute it by providing the public with accurate, relevant information and exceptional service. As stated above, the quality of the financial statement is not where we want it to be as yet. However, we are happy with the continuing improvements. The more detailed disclosures and the cleanup which led to a more accurate presentation of the amounts of the financial statement line items. We know that the implementation of the new financial processes and the financial system will lead to a more standardized way of working and automated processes, which will also help to further improve the quality of the financial information and the financial statements of the country. Lastly, I would like to thank the staff, the ministry, and all the other ministries as well, because in order to make a financial statement for the country, we are dependent on information from all the ministries. It is really a team effort, and I thank everyone that provided and compiled the information. I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Minister of Finance. I look at the speakers list, and there are no speakers. Oh, we have a last minute. You're not yet cited, so it's not last minute. We have one speaker so far, MP Westcott Williams. MP, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the Minister for his presentation of the annual accounts of government for 2021. The entire package of this document includes, in addition to the figures presented by the minister, it includes, of course, the reaction, or at least the advice, by the internal accountant SOAB, the internal accountant of government. It contains the General Audit Chamber report on the annual account. And Mr. Chairman, I guess if I play the usual play ball, we will be getting in a discussion in terms of the minister saying, but there are improvements, and then I, for one, will be referring to the very critical analysis of the both bodies that I just mentioned, namely the SOAB, the Internal Accountant of Government, and the General Audit Chamber. So I will not go into that part of it, Mr. Chairman, but I do want to highlight, one, what the General Audit Chamber has advised the Parliament of Sint Maarten to demand from the government in terms of giving, as we call it, discharge of the, to the minister, to the government for the annual account 2021. The General Audit Chamber is again pleading with the Parliament of Sint Maarten to review its recommendations to the government, which over the years, there are very specific items that the government refuses to address. The procurement regulation, that based on the accountability ordinance, the government is supposed to make and have available. We have heard many things, have seen a proposal went to the Council of Advice on this matter, that being retracted, and again, it is mentioned in these reports. So question is, where is that at? Where is it at? And the answer that runs like a red thread throughout the answers given by the minister in the Central Committee meeting, that, is part of the financial improvement, the financial management improvement project. We are seeing that all over. It's part of the financial management improvement project. In the case of the procurement / bidding, public bidding policies, it's not sufficient. That answer is not sufficient. Another matter that keeps coming back, was in there last year, the year before, and probably the one before and the one before, the sharing of decisions with the SOAB to determine that the expenditures are in accordance with decisions taken by the Council of Ministers. So my question in that regard is it government's position that these decisions will not be shared? Then stay that. Then just tell the SOAB you're not getting in on the decisions. Or is it not happening because of other reasons that these are not shared? And if it's because of other reasons, the question is, what are those reasons? It keeps coming back, and it's here again. The fact that the quarterly reports, the Parliament of Sint Maarten receives quarterly reports regarding the execution of the budget. So we receive every quarter what is actual compared to the budget. The General Audit Chamber of Sint Maarten has stressed on more than one occasion that those particular reports, so the ones that are actually based on the Kingdom Law for Financial Supervision, that these do not lend themselves for an actual control by Parliament in terms of how the government is executing the budget as passed by Parliament? Does the government concur that the current quarterly financial reports that we receive are not the reports that are requested or that are mandated via the accountability ordinance? And I believe Article 44, the minister can let me know that. So those reports that we get within 6 weeks after every quarter, does the minister agree that these are not the ones as prescribed, that's the right word, in the accountability ordinance? Mr. Chairman, the General Audit Chamber and the SOAB have made mention of the fact that we could talk about catching up with the annual accounts. We could talk about cleaning up the annual accounts. But if this process does not tie in with the process of the budget, that cycle is incomplete. So while today we are asked to give the government a nod of approval on its financial management for 2021, the question is, again, I ask, the budget 2023, the amended budget 2023. And yes, did I not see the answer given by the minister? Yes, I saw the answer given by the minister to questions of the Central Committee meeting of Parliament, but that the budget is, according to the government, the amended budget 2023 is supposed to be in process. Did that budget reach the Council of Advice? Did the amended budget 2023 reach the Council of Advice for its vetting? I referred earlier to the fact that the reference is constantly made to the financial management improvement project which is being executed. And guess what? Under the TWO, under the country package, under the, so we're going to get former Prime Minister Leona Romeo to kind of look at that for us too in terms of how the government is executing its part. But that was a side note. Fact is that under this project, the minister constantly refers to it when we talk about the issue of the collection policy, which the government has and which is in the process of being upgraded and then publicized. That's one of the answers given by the minister. So is that question, through you, Mr. Chairman, is that policy, so the one that needs to be updated, is it currently publicized? What are the other parts and progress specifically of this financial management improvement? What are the specific parts? So not that it's going to be part of the project, but what are the specific parts of the project and how are we faring? Because, Mr. Chairman, in this report by the SOAB and the General Audit Chamber, we see where the government refuses to act expediently on matters such as the crime fund. All of these matters are listed in this report. So what are we doing as part of the financial management improvement project? Mr. Chairman, talking about the issue of the budget, the amended budget 2023 that should have been here already, what is the progress that has been touted by the government with respect to the refinancing of the loans by the Dutch government? So what is this progress? Apparently, a watertight proposal has been prepared by the government of Sint Maarten. Could you share some elements Could you, could you share some elements of this with the Parliament of St. Martin, or would you tell us, well, wait until the State Secretary reports to the second chamber and then take note? Because that is how we learn most of the information with respect to what this government is doing in the context of the relationship with the Dutch government, the loans, what is being prescribed, the conditions that are being issued, etc., etc. So, Mr. Chairman, again, I'm not going to belabor this issue about the many things that are, the many critical issues that are mentioned in these reports. And yeah, maybe administratively, some progress has been made, is being made over the years. But when it comes to compliance by the government of St. Martin, there are no two ways to interpret the condemnation on this particular annual account in terms of decisions and decision making. And so, Mr. Chairman, I want to hear the minister's reaction to that. Overall speaking, the serious observations by the SOAB and by the General Audit Chamber on governance of the country and governance of the budget procedure and process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. I look at the speakers list and we have no further speakers. Minister, do you care to respond right now? Half an hour? I would suggest then that we go to agenda point 3 and allow the minister to prepare the answers. And we will then deal with that after. We'll adjourn for 2 minutes so that the minister and his support team can leave while we prepare for the next agenda point. Welcome back. After that brief adjournment, we go over to agenda point 3. At this time, I would like to welcome the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Minister Omar Otley, and his support team, including management members from SZV. Agenda point 3, draft national ordinance amending the national ordinance on general old age insurance, the national ordinance on general widow and orphans insurance, the national ordinance on minimum wages, the national ordinance on health insurance, and the national ordinance on accident insurance to adjust the reference period for the price index of household consumption, which is in incoming document 853 of the current parliamentary year dated June 9th, 2023, document 168. The draft national ordinance amending the national ordinance on general old age insurance, the national ordinance on general widow and orphans insurance, the national ordinance on minimum wages, the national ordinance on health insurance, and the national ordinance on accident insurance to adjust the reference period for the price index of household, parliamentary year 2022-2023, document 168, was recently received on June 9th, 2023 by Parliament. A central committee meeting was held subsequently on June 23rd, 2023, on the subject matter in which the members of Parliament posed their questions and the Minister answered these questions. A report was made on the deliberations in the Central Committee meeting and was sent to the government. The government answered this report with a so-called note following the final report, incoming document 999 of the current parliamentary year, dated August 15th, 2023. All members have received a copy of the draft national ordinance and the note following the final report digitally via email. These documents can be found on the Parliament General Team. At this time, I would first like to give the floor to the Honourable Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labour, Mr. Omar Otley, for his introductory remarks and or his presentation. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to the members of Parliament, my support staff, the viewing and listening public. It is definitely an honor to be here today to handle this very important legislation as you went over the many aspects in which it affects in our daily life. I'll move to the next slide. We have the table of content where we speak of the aims and objective, historical background, what is the CPI and the calculation method, pros of using quarterly CPI, current legislation and articles that will be affected as you named, Mr. Chair, and financial implications. The aim and objective, this draft proposed to amend the provision of certain national regulations regulating to the adjustments of amounts based on development and price index of household consumptions. The changes to specific regulation include National Ordinance of General Old Age Insurance, the pension, National Ordinance on General Widow and Orphan Insurance, National Ordinance on Minimum Wage, National Health Insurance Ordinance, and National Accident Insurance Ordinance. Under the current legislation, the adjustment amounts of such as pension, etc., is subject to the CPI of the month of August of the previous year. Since 2018, the methodology used by the Department of Stats has been adjusted and the price index is determined quarterly. This has been a concern by the Council of Advice since 2018 when this method changed to where they advised to change the legislation in which we are doing today. Next slide. Pension Increase 2022, May 6, 2022, the said was requested to render an advice on the indexation. In November, the said answered back 2022, stating that it is not possible due to the legislation stating specifically August CPI. His Excellency was also consulted, and the Council of Advice also rendered the same advice. Therefore, the pension could not be indexed until this ordinance is handled. On December 22, 2022, the draft ordinance was approved to be sent to the SED. On December 27th, 2022, we sent it to the SED. On December 28th, 2022, the Secretary General requested for Yeas and Way to vet the ordinance. On the 4th of January 2023, Yeas and Way provided their advice. On the 27th of January, the SED provided their advice. On the 31st of January, I signed an order for the LVO to be sent to the Council of Ministers. On February 9, 2023, the Council of Ministers sent it to the Council of Advice. On the 17th of February, the Governor then sent it to the Council of Advice for review. On the 30th of March, the Council of Advice provided their advice. On the 12th of May, after going through extensive research and preparing the NADA report, we sent the NADA report to Yeas and Way, in which by the 24th of May, the NADA report was approved by all bodies, in which on the 23rd of June, we presented to Parliament, and we are here today. If Parliament suggests changes, the draft will be edited, and Yeas and Way will prepare AINTEX in 2 to 4 weeks. If signed immediately, it goes into effect 5 to 7 weeks, considering there's no objection. If it's done the beginning of September, it will be in effect mid-October, early November. Worst case scenario, the end of November. The projected pension increased amounts is based on the second quarter CPI of 2021, which was at 2.84%, in which this would take the maximum pension from $12.40 to $13.38. This slide is very important, in which many persons ask and speak about the taxing of the pension. We would like to make it clear, if AOV is your sole income, your sole pensionable income, you are not taxed. There is no tax. Based on the legislation, you need to make 2,160 guilders or 26,000 guilders a year to be taxed. As you can see illustrated in the graph, if you, with the increase of the pension, your yearly income would be $16,056. So therefore, you are not eligible to be taxed. Even if we do the retroactive payment, the amount that the pensioners will receive for the retroactive payment will not bring them over the $26,000. Therefore, they will not be taxed. I would like to reiterate, if AOV pension is your sole income, those are the persons that really are suffering. As you can see, it's under the minimum wage. You are not taxed. So we speak, anybody that have multiple incomes or multiple streams, then they will be taxed. Thank you. I look forward to any questions in the handling of this legislation.
Thank you, Minister, for the brief introduction. And we go over to the speakers list. I see we have one speaker so far. And may I remind you that the allotted speaking time on this agenda point is also 20 minutes in the first round and 10 minutes in the second round, even though I did not mention that for under the first agenda point. Our first speaker on the screen, MP Rolando Bryson. MP Bryson, you have the floor.
Good afternoon now, members of Parliament, Chairman Khafir, the Honorable Minister and your team, those in the Tribune, and those following this meeting. Mr. Chairman, I have to once again thank the Minister for addressing an issue that, from what I understand, dates back to many years. And the fact that we have had complications in being able, from a technical perspective, to be able to raise the pension, not just this time, but if I understand correctly, now going forward, we will also continuously be able to index our pension to be more reflective, or at least this social pension as something more reflective to the increases in costs in our society, is a huge win for the pensioners in Sint Maarten. And I think it's important to highlight this important milestone that we are taking right now, and hopefully that the Parliament will support, because it is something that will affect the lives of many, many people in our country. Mr. Chairman, I do want to ask the Minister, how long has it been since, whether it's the SZV or the SER or even within your ministry, that this has been advised to be done? Because I can imagine that the Minister is someone that, you know, goes into the Ministry of VSA and has sought a lot of the issues that have been stagnant for a long time and decided to deal with them. But I would also find it hard to believe that this is something that only came up at this time. I know this has been a lingering problem for a very long time. How far back do these advices go? Is it from 2010? Is it from 15, 18? It would be interesting to know how long ministers have been advised to take the action that the minister has taken by bringing this law to the Parliament of Sint Maarten. And Mr. Chairman, the only other, let's say, consideration I would like to bring to the minister, and this is something that in looking in the law to see if there's any aspects that I would think need some adjusting. My concern would be the final article in the law, because in the way it was presented in the draft, it states that it would be by means of a national decree that it would go into effect. I don't know how effective this is, because the most important thing we need at this point is that if the Parliament supports this, that as soon as possible, the minister is then able to sign another national decree, which is what will actually implement the changes that this law allows. But when I read the date of effect, or when it would go into effect in the law, it talks about by national decree, so another national decree. I really think, and I would like to propose to amend that article to actually bring it in line with our customary way of doing it, or even consider spoedeisend belang, considering the urgency of it. But either one of them, I don't know if we should continue, and I don't personally believe we should continue that it should be by landsbesluit te bepalen tijdstip. I think it should go through a more formal process, as we've done with other laws, either by the national ordinance and the time frame after, or even better, by considering the urgency, the advices from the SER and others that have stated that this is long overdue, that this should be done as soon as possible. So I will be proposing and booking in that amendment shortly, but I do want to at least hear from the minister on his opinion on that. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't really have much to say. I think the minister has made it very clear. We know what the point of this is. The ultimate point of it, whether this law is not the exact law that increases the pension, it is the most important and critical aspect of allowing the minister to do what we need to do for our pensioners. And this is where it now falls on the Parliament to open that door for the minister to really finish the job that he's continuing to do for the people of Sint Maarten. And now we are talking about the pension of our people. So I thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the minister, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Bryson. And we have another speaker that has signed in, MP Westcott Williams. MP, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you once again, and a good afternoon. A good afternoon to Minister Otley now and his support staff who's here with us to present and respond to this or these amendments to the relevant laws that would then make it possible for the pensions to be indexed on another basis than it has been until now. The reason for that change is because the Central Bureau for Statistics has adjusted their calculation of the cost of living index, and thus using the month of August as the measuring stick to determine whether the pension should be indexed was no longer feasible. But Mr. Chairman, before I even go into the few comments and maybe questions that I have, I direct myself to the minister via the chair, and I ask if the minister took note of the statement from the chair of Parliament regarding SZV and the treatment of our people abroad. The President of Parliament made mention of the fact that due to the processes and procedures of SZV, someone from Sint Maarten actually passed away. And Mr. Chairman, through you again, but directly to the minister, this is a serious, serious blemish on SZV. Is the minister aware of whatever it is that led to that happening? Is the minister aware what part of our SZV laws, our medical laws, could have created such a situation? Unfortunately, this issue was highlighted here in Parliament by the President of Parliament in extending condolences to someone who passed away. But then, immediately, my question would be, how many other persons have not suffered similar fates? How many persons have not suffered similar fates? And I want an answer to that from the minister. This is not a condolence message only. This is not that kind of a message issued by the President of Parliament. And I wish I could repeat the exact words of the President of the Parliament of Sint Maarten, extending condolences. And in other words, and this goes song, maybe, I don't want to say, never mind what I was going to say. But actually it came down to saying that the person who passed away was actually left to pass away because of SZV not picking up the ball. Not being able to, I don't know. Do the laws prevent it from happening? Do the laws prevent SZV from? I don't know. But I want to hear the minister's response to that claim. And I know the minister and SZV and nobody else can't give any individual information. I don't want that. I want to know if indeed it is because of the lack of law, processes, and or procedures that our people who have to leave Sint Maarten for one situation, if confronted with another situation in another country, all at once, then you are left at the mercy of whom? Because you don't have money in your pocket to pay for what is encountered when you're over there? That is what has been said. So I would like, Minister, I really would like, and if you're saying to me, MP, I can't answer you right away because I don't know of the statement that was made by the President of Parliament, then take your time and give me a response, please. Because if that is really the case, and if this was evident, and we have lost persons because of that, so we're not going to address it, and the next one that goes over there, and then you encounter that a person has something else wrong than what he or she went for, and then it's like, you're on your own, medically speaking? Really? And sticking with the SZV, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister, Mr. Chairman, The minister, in the overview that we received in answers to questions by members of parliament, gave an alarming overview of the status of the funds of the SZV, especially the ZV. The ZV in one of the tables is in the red for like 251 million guilders. This prompts me to ask, when are we going to deal with this matter, this known matter of the Hummel funds? When are we going to deal with that? Where is it? How? I see the minister. I guess what the minister whispered was that. I know she was coming with that. But, yeah, so those numbers really, again, 251 million guilders in the red. So when is that going to happen? When are we going to be able to better manage these funds in their totality? Can the minister give an update as to the overseas referrals, which in 2019 were like 60 million guilders, and of course 2020 it was much less because of the COVID year. So if the minister has an update, some update information where that is concerned. Minister, then I want to discuss with you the issue of the general health insurance. And I know you have reported that this is going to, and then I need to understand whether you're saying general health insurance will go into effect on the 1st of January 2024, actually go into effect. So now that the ordinance will be made up and the effective date will then come after, but did the minister, in giving the date of January 1st, 2024, did the minister mean to say that as per that date, it will go into effect and not in phases? So, boom, January 1, 2024, everyone falling within the scope of the law will be entitled to medical coverage, based on the law, of course. So that's my question. Is that what I'm to understand from the date of January 1st, 2024? Because if that is not the case, and if this law, which by the way, according to what I have been able to ascertain, this draft law, we're past the mid-mark of August, and this law is not yet by the Council of Advice. And if it is, then I would like to, then I stand to be corrected, and then I would ask that if it is, that it is mentioned on the website of the Council of Advice that that law has been submitted to them. Because as of yesterday, it was not. That would mean that in the next 4.5 months, this particular general health insurance law will have to go to the Council of Advice, be commented on, go back to government, be commented on again, and then come to Parliament, be debated. That is what would then have to happen. So I would like to know what is the implementation strategy for the general health insurance. And then, and Minister, I say all of that to get to the following point. And it also ties in to the finances of SZV funds. Right now, and the minister is going to, through you, Mr. Chairman, the minister again is going to say, I wish you were coming with that, because he knows I'm coming with it. Minister, right now, certain persons are excluded from medical coverage. And I want to refer specifically to bus drivers, taxi drivers, sole proprietors, and vendors. Minister, you can, based on the law, you can, because what is the issue here? The issue is here, who is considered an employer or an employee? And bus drivers, taxi drivers, sole proprietors, and vendors, they fall between the cracks. And unless you got some little plan like creating an association of taxi drivers, etc., these persons cannot receive insurance, medical insurance by the SZV. So, Minister, if the general health insurance will not be in effect for everyone as per the 1st of January 2024, are you, through you, Mr. Chairman, so is the minister willing to use the authority granted to him in the law for sickness insurance by the SZV to give the denomination of employee to the sectors that I just mentioned, who presently are excluded from medical coverage? So, bus drivers, taxi drivers, sole proprietors, and vendors, amongst others, because there's some other categories that fall between the cracks. So, Minister, are you willing, if everyone would not fall under the general health insurance coverage on the 1st of January 2024, are you, Minister, through the chairperson, inclined to act on Article 1 of the sickness insurance of the SZV and issue a national decree specifying that these persons who currently do not fall under the law can be considered workers and therefore will fall under this law? I would like to hear on that matter from the minister, please. Minister, thank you for clarifying, through you, Mr. Chairman, the matter of taxes on pension. And Minister, what you presented there is completely correct. Even the maximum pension has to be adjusted based on the indexation of the pension will be below the tax threshold, and thus, if that's all you earn, only your pension, and I think it's important to make this point, Minister, I thank you for doing it. If that's all that you earn, which is your pension, you don't pay tax on it. But Minister, there are two parts or two issues that I want you to take note of in this regard. One is the fact that many of our pensioners are receiving tax assessments from previous occupation or whatever have you, and that, yes, they owe, or maybe for husband, wife, etc., that, yes. In addition to that, Minister, I need to understand from you, because you are right, because if you take the 1338, I believe it was, anyhow, 1,330 something pension, and you times it by 12, you'll not be at a threshold for tax. For the tax-free foot, you would not have exceeded that. However, the question is, your calculation, Minister, suggests that the pensions of all persons will be indexed per, I think you counted it, let's say per October. Let's say per October, Minister, because I want to get to the implementation, which you want to do by national decree, and I'll ask you why in a moment. But what I want to get at is the fact that, so come October, the pensioner, at least those who receive maximum, because we know you have persons who, based on their active years, receive much less than the 1,227 that it is now. And so come October, let's take a maximum pension earner. I await a change of chair. Yes. So, Minister, as I was asking you, so October month comes and the maximum pension earner gets his or her regular pension, 1,227, and then would have about October, that would make it like maybe 9 months retroactive. And my question is, what tax system does SZV apply? Will SZV then say 1,227? No, you're below the threshold, no taxes, but you are receiving a retroactive. And that retroactive will be taxed, or not. Or not. That's my question. And, Mr. Chairman, let me go ahead. If that is the case, Minister, I want to give you in consideration, through you, Mr. Chairman, that then the retroactive, if that's the system that SZV is employing, I'm not sure which one it is, or they wait until the end of the year. I don't know. Let me don't go into that. But if it is the case that the retroactive pension increase of approximately now 900 guilders, if we include the month of September, and if that would be taxed separately as an extraordinary payment, then I would suggest to the ministry and SZV that then it is considered taking the retroactive and dividing it over X amount of months. And dividing it over X amount of months. So the 900 guilders, put on 100 guilders of it in October, November, December, etc., etc., etc. Because if the total amount of 900 is going to be taxed on the extraordinary allowance tax bracket, then our people will be jeopardized again. Mr. Chairman, I would like the minister to explain a little more what the objective is of the recently announced project survey, rather, that is the steps. I would like the minister to explain the objective of that in terms of, is it expected to produce results such as we have known them, such as we have seen them in How Healthy is St. Maarten? Is that kind of a picture that we're going to get? Because, Mr. Chairman, and I mentioned these numbers to the minister already, because if I take the Healthy Caribbean information, and for the Caribbean and for CARICOM countries, and then I don't think that St. Maarten is any different, maybe to the contrary. And then when we see again, and these discussions have been had over and over, heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and cancers are the leading causes of premature death. Hypertension is the leading risk factor for death. Diabetes prevalence is double global rates. According to surveys conducted in 12 CARICOM countries, 10 to 25% of adults have diabetes, and 20% to over 50% suffer from high blood pressure. I know that the minister has indicated that NCD plan or policy is being worked on. And my question is, how quickly can we see action where these matters are concerned? Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Next, we have MP Pantaflet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the chair, my colleagues in Parliament, or Secretary General, of course, Honourable Minister and the support staff, persons who are viewing and listening by this available medium. Mr. Chairman, let me thank the Minister through you and the staff again for showing that matters that have been outstanding for quite a long time are being addressed. And, you know, it's important, again, for us to have what you call stability in government in order to get things done. So I want to commend the Minister and his staff through Mr. Chairman on this. I just have two questions, and because some of the questions asked by former colleagues are very interesting questions indeed, and I'm sure that the minister and his staff will be able to answer them. One of the questions I have, Mr. Chairman, has to do with, I'd ask, how is the aid given? And the response, and this is for the public, was the aid is given based on a calculation. My question then, Mr. Chairman, through you is, based on what calculation, what article of the law is being used in order to determine how the calculation is done? Because given a calculation is okay, but what kind of calculation is being used? Because important for the public to know that whatever government does has to be based on a law. So what kind of calculation is based on the amount of household, the expenses of the individual or individuals, you know, what kind of calculation is being used, Mr. Chairman. Also, another question I'd ask, Mr. Chairman, had to do with the time frame it takes to get back to the people requesting social assistance. My question was, what is the legal time frame? And the response is, as it pertains to financial aid, 2 months, medical aid, 1 month, legal aid, 2 weeks, and emergency medical, defined as a client who is terminally ill or life-threatening time frame period is 72 hours or less. Again, the answer is fine, but what law substantiates that this is how it is done? Because I was of the opinion, if I can recall, reading a document where it takes about 6 weeks, I believe, if I'm not correct, but again, that's what I'm asking for, the document to, the law to prove that indeed this is the requirement in order for, in case the individual have want to appeal the decision given by government, then they can do so. So, Chairman, I am happy, and that's why I'll be very brief, because the explanation regards to the income of the pensioners was mentioned, which I find is correct in order to determine whether they got to pay taxes, yes or not. For me, even those who have what you call additional income, one of the things I had mentioned more than once on this floor, and again, it has to do with law. Persons who have worked hard all their life to maybe build a few apartments and so on, collect, of course, additional income. And they fall within the tax bracket as established by government or by receivers or whatever. And I suggest, and I'm looking at that also, I believe the Minister of Finance too would be part of this, where we should not, they should not be taxed similarly to others who have probably earned a very large salary during a period of time while they worked. Someone say, is that discrimination? I don't think so. Because, Mr. Chairman, you see, very often when you go on pension, your income definitely does not reflect what you made when you're working normally. It is much less. So I believe it is something we should look at to see exactly what can be done in order to ease the burden on those persons. And interestingly, one of my colleagues mentioned the issue of the sole proprietorship. And yesterday, I was asked a question about it as to, again, these persons can hire somebody who can get medical coverage by SZV, but they themselves are not covered. And this is another issue that's been going on for many years now. And I'm sure that with time, the minister, through Mr. Chairman, would address this matter in order to bring it to a solution once and for all, because it's something that I'm getting stopped all the time when I go to the supermarket or whatever, I'm walking down the street or whatever, I'm asked by mainly sole proprietors, when are we going to be able to get what you call coverage, medical coverage from SZV? So, as I said, questions were asked, very interesting questions, and I will await the response from the minister through Mr. Chairman in order to determine whether I need a second round, yes or not. But again, I want to thank the minister and his staff for the work that they're doing and continue to do. It's not easy. And I do hope that in the future we can continue to make changes that are necessary, especially when it comes to the issue of the social aid, because, again, importantly, we should look at the cost of living also. And on that matter, before I forget, Mr. Chairman, what I wanted to say with regards to the pension increase. Cost of living has increased tremendously also. And suggestion from me would be, if the pension has been established, and let's say 2024, cost of living increases by 3.4%, then we have to find a way to increase the pension by 3.4%. Otherwise, it makes no sense for them, because if their pension remains stagnant and cost of living increases, they'll be back at stage one again. So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity, and I await the answers from the minister.
Thank you, MP Pantaflet. Next, we have MP Emmanuel. You have the floor. You got it?
Mr. Speaker, good afternoon, and thank you very much. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister, and good afternoon to everyone who is watching and listening. Honorable Minister, I only have one question for you. How much will be added now to the pension with this indexation? How much more will it be? 100 guilders, 200 guilders, 300 guilders? How much more would be added with this indexation of the pension? That's all I have to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Emmanuel. And next, MP Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to yourself. Good afternoon to the griffier, to the secretariat, to the Honorable Minister, and to those in the Tribune, everybody else tuned in. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to say off the bat that this law will have my support based on the contents and what it is trying to better regulate. But I did have some questions, mainly in light of what the Council of Advice says in the review of the law. My first question to you, Mr. Chairman, is which version of this proposed law are we handling? Because in the document that we received, we see that the Department of Legal Affairs also amended the proposal and gave sort of their own version on it. However, this version differs from the version that is presented to us in Parliament, mainly in the section concerning Article 13 of the Landsverordening Minimumlonen. In the version that we got, it says that na het derde lid worden 2 onderdelen toegevoegd. And then it continues with sections 5 and 6. But what happens to section 4 of the law in that case? My question would be, what is meant with onderdelen? Because there's a difference between a section, a lid, and onderdelen. Because in a version that's coming from legal affairs, however, they only speak of a vierde lid wordt toegevoegd. And they don't speak of any onderdelen. And this is actually the correct term to use when you're adding only sections to the article, if that is the goal. So the question is, which one are we looking at? Because if the intention is to say that 2 sections were added to the article, then I'm of the opinion that it should say leden instead of onderdelen, just to be technically, legally correct. Another question that I had for you, Mr. Chairman, is the spoedeisend belang, the purpose for asking the Council of Advice to treat the advice urgently. Because when an adviesverzoek comes with a spoedverzoek, it needs a dragende motivering. And the Council said that this was lacking, and they asked government to take this into consideration. So I'm just asking what the real motivation is behind it, you know, except from the political answer that we heard from my colleagues in here, which is that we're finally going to fix the pension. A real answer for the spoedeisend belang, because the Council of Advice eggs a little bit on this. Then coming back to the law, the one observation that I got from the Council of Advice is that the one actual change that this law brings about is to force the government into doing the indexing annually. Which in theory is already allowed to be done and should have been done, but that is a good thing. But what I take from this is, and this is me playing a little bit devil's advocate, is the possible risk of over-legislation if we consider the risk of a scenario, for example, like COVID-19, when everybody and everyone went on a standstill, and so there couldn't be any indexation at that time. The law currently does not give a provision for such a solution for such a year, and not only are we in a hurricane belt, but we can possibly get another pandemic as well. So just a suggestion, not a criticism, to consider that aspect of it, because if we are forced to be reactive, and then when the time comes, then we try to remedy the situation, then, you know, we're kicking down the can a little bit. Then it comes to the financial consequences, Mr. Chairman. I believe this law becomes a little bit more waterdicht, as we call it, because the law cannot legislate the amount of extra money that will be necessary in order to comply with this law annually. That is a job partially for Parliament to deal with. So this is actually a call on all of us, Parliament and government, to find that financial solution because that problem will arise. And when it comes, you're going to need the extra money for the people. And lastly, to you, Mr. Chairman, I want to commend you, Minister, for walking this long trajectory for legislation. I saw the timeline put on the presentation, and I want to commend you for this because when you compare the quality of this law to what we saw presented in Parliament last Monday, for example, it proves exactly the point that I was trying to make when I said that we as MPs, our job is not to draft new laws by ourselves, because all national ordinances have to be subjected to the same quality check, regardless where they come from, whether it's government or Parliament. The standard needs to stay the same, and we cannot lower the bar, regardless if we personally feel like we deserve praise for our efforts. So again, Minister, I'm happy to see that in this law, that as I previously said, you involved the Department of Legal Affairs. A good back and forth between the council and the department and the ministry is what made the quality of this law up to standard. That'll be all for me, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Next, we would have MP. Next, MP De Wever.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to you, Griffier, members of Parliament, the Minister and his staff, and those viewing and listening. No, this is actually very brief because the last two members of Parliament before me covered it. And I just would like for the Minister, I'm going to ask the question if you can just explain it for us in layman's term, exactly what is changing in the legislation, just for public consumption, that this is, whether this is something linked into the consumer price index that is going to be done, updated quarterly, if it's going to happen automatic based on what changes happen in the consumer price index. Also, whether or not it's something, so MP Peterson beforehand talked about whether or not we'll see a potential delay in it, but then just to see if you can clarify that this change is a minor change or not. Is it a minor change or not? Is it going to delay the annual process of linking it to the consumer price index, and then also incorporating it with what Member Parliament Emmanuel said earlier? How much does this adjust the AOV or amount that persons will go home with? Because I just wanted to be clear that there's a lot of things combining here, and it's just to really, really be straightforward and transparent with the public when they are actually really looking for technically tax-free and more money coming in. So I just want us to be very clear when we're saying a tax-free in the sense of their income that they're coming as a retiree is not being taxed. Persons are looking for breaks. We are struggling. So even though we are trying to figure out in creative ways how SZV can survive and how pensioners can get more money, the thing is we can't disconnect that from the fact that someone's got to pay at the end of the day. So we want to give breaks to the persons that definitely need it, but where's the rest of it coming in? So I just want to get layman's term explanation, making sure that it's not a figure that can be attached, it's more percentages we're talking about, and what the elderly can really look forward to. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, MP De Wever. Just to confirm that we have no others signed in to speak at this time. There are quite some questions, so I will adjourn for 3 minutes to discuss with the Minister the way forward for the meeting. Meeting adjourned until 1. Good afternoon once again, members of parliament and those viewing. The minister would require approximately 2 hours to return with the answers to the questions posed. Therefore, we will adjourn this agenda point until 3 p.m. The Minister of Finance still needs about 5 minutes to come with the answers for the second agenda point. So I'll adjourn this meeting for, we're adjourning agenda point 3 now, and we'll adjourn the meeting to return to agenda point 2 and return in 5 minutes. Meeting adjourned. Good afternoon once again, members of parliament and the viewing public. We are now back to agenda 2, where we're handling the draft national ordinance establishing the annual accounts of the country Sint Maarten for the financial year 2021. The national ordinance adopting the annual accounts 2021. We had one speaker in the first round, MP Sarah Westcott Williams, who posed questions to the minister, and the minister is here with the answers to the questions posed. Minister, you have the floor. Change the card.
Good? Yes. Good afternoon to members of parliament. Good afternoon to the viewing public returning to this meeting. Regarding the 2021 annual accounts, I'll also like to take into consideration also that this is a moment in time. This is 2021. So, having comments saying that the government refuses to do something is not accurate in many cases, because since those recommendations, we have taken actions since 2021. And that leads me then into the first answer. We have taken into account, and that question was regarding the common decisions in SORB. We have taken into account all the recommendations from both SORB and the audit chamber, and of course, we cannot change everything at once. But in the reports, when comparing to previous years, it can be seen and stated that we are improving. With regards to specifically, again, mentioned the SORB, these decision points, we do give the decision points to SORB since 2022. With regard to the procurement regulation, this should be finalized by the fourth quarter of this year. Next, with regard to the sharing of common decisions, as I mentioned already, I would like to make it clear that the sharing of common decisions has not happened for any previous financial statement under no previous government. However, we are currently finalizing the 2022 financial statement, and the common decisions have been shared with SORB for them to execute the audit. This is another instance of us improving and taking into account the recommendations and findings noted by the auditors and sharing the requested information with them to further improve the financial statements of country Sint Maarten. The quarterly report shared with Parliament includes the key information as stated in Article 44, such as the comparison of the current year to the budget and the previous year. This report is a key tool that can be used by Parliament to measure and monitor the finances of the country, as it clearly indicates insights into the figures. There are many improvements to be made to this report based on Article 44. However, the key financial information needed is included, and this has been the report which has always been used previously. We are focused on we are of course willing and looking into the most efficient way to synchronize the information to be able to provide the various reports. Next answer. In June 2023, the COM approved the amended budget. However, the CFT requested that some additional changes be made after approval of the budget by COM, which have led to another delay. So it's not that we already did our part. CFT asked for some changes, which we then complied with. And currently, given the fact that the budget 2023 and 2024 are being adjusted simultaneously, the information as included in 2024 budget must align with the budget 2023. As such, budget 2024 is now key in the finalization of the amended 2023 budget. Next, the early stabilite is an internal policy and as such is not published. We are currently reviewing and updating it accordingly, and it is expected to be published very soon. With regard to the financial management project, we will share the plan of approach with Parliament, which includes all the different elements of this project. Next, progress is being made at the moment with Central Bank, Sint Maarten, and the Netherlands as we are going over the last scenarios. These scenarios entail partly annuity, interest rates, bullet loan, the period of the loan, grace periods, etc. These different scenarios are processed through the central bank model, taking into account multi-annual economic developments, debt to GDP ratio, and of course the multi-annual budgetary consequences. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, during my tenure as minister, I have approved the financial statements for the year 2013 up until 2020. When I came in as minister, my goal was to clean up the backlog and improve the financial statements. The recommendations provided by SORB and the audit chamber had my full attention as minister. This led to the financial management project and the cleanup of the administration. And you can clearly see that as of 2020, there's a drastic improvement in comparison to previous years. These recommendations are taken and the finance team are working these. However, we cannot address all of them at once. In both the SORB and the audit chamber report, over the last few years, you can see the improvements made and the statements by them stating the improvements seen. This also includes sharing of the information, the calm decisions, as mentioned above, which has not been done previously. I've mentioned in my presentation that we are not where we want to be as yet, and we know this, however, will continue on the path of improvement, and the financial system will be key in this process. Our goal is still to remain to achieve an unqualified opinion in the future. The Ministry of Finance team and other ministries have worked hard to be able to close the backlog and have up-to-date financial statements as a team effort. I thank them, and I also would like to thank the SRB and the audit chamber, and of course Parliament for having assisted in this, and I hope to continue on this path.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any points of clarification for the Minister based on his answers to the questions posed? I see MP Westcott Williams. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, so I'm just confirming that the Minister stated that since 2022, all COM decisions are shared with the SOAB, and if so, how is it done? Like every month they get it, or the decision was taken that all the decisions of 2022 will eventually be shared with the SOAB? So how is that done in practice? So the Minister said since 2022, and how is it done in practice? I took note and just want to confirm that the procurement regulations will be done in or by the fourth quarter of this year. And the Minister referred to the budget 2023, the amended budget 2023, and the fact that the so the Council of Ministers drafted an amended budget, and that then the CFT had comments on that draft budget. And so my question to that, Mr. Chairman, is the CFT in its letter regarding amending the budget was very clear. There were only a few points that the CFT highlighted that needed to appear in an amended budget. So I would want to ask the Minister, what of those few things, such as a multi-annual capital projection, etc., what of the few things that needed to be done in the amended budget 2023 were not done or done correctly, given the CFT to come back again on the amended budget? One, and the fact that loans were supposed to be granted based on the multi-annual capital budget, where do we stand now with contracting the loans for the different capital? I know we got the approval, but specifically contracting the loans for the different capital projects as per the budget 2023. In terms of clarifications, Mr. Chairman, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. How much time would you need, Minister, to answer those clarifications? Yeah, going right into it. Give him a... You have the floor.
So the first comment was in regard to the SRB COM decisions. So SRB, all COM decisions now have been, for 2022, have been shared with SRB. regarding the CFT letter, we started the process you mentioned. CFT did have some minor adjustments, but also take into consideration specifically the multi-annual. When we look at, for instance, justice, we also have to include that in had to update our multi-annual for 2024, which we also have to reflect in 2023. So these have to be aligned. And regarding the process for CapEx, it has been improved, as you mentioned, and it now has to also pass through the Eerste Kamer, I believe, also still. They indicated to us that the parliament starts back, I believe, in September. I'm not too sure when. So we have to wait until then. But everything has been positive up until now. So that's the final part of that process. I think those are three, right? Okay, they
Just
nod.
a confirmation if those were other clarifications, MP Westcott Williams? 3? Yes. Thank you, Minister. We now would go over to the second round of the handling of this draft national ordinance. And we have one speaker, which is Sarah Westcott Williams.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, the minister in his responses in the first round highlighted some of the improvements that were done since this annual account was made up. Mr. Chairman, I want to read to you and through you some of the bases for the disapproving opinion as far as the financial accuracy, even legality, rechtmatigheid is concerned. And I would ask the minister if he can respond to them. 1, the subsidy ordinance, I'm reading from the comments and remarks, the subsidy ordinance for a great amount of the granting of subsidies was not followed. This regards 66 million guilders. So these points I would like the minister to go in a little and explain. The next point would have been the one on sharing the COM decisions with the agencies. The minister gave an answer to that for 2022. You have where it is stated that study loans are not being done on a legal basis. That's a conclusion they have reached. What's the minister's position on that? It is also stated that the amount granted in 2021 for that is 4.1 million guilders. It then continues to mention that the income from permits, especially economic permits, is done on a cash basis, so as received, and not on an accrual basis. And then something that I mentioned earlier is the matter of how the money of the crime fund is spent. And it is stated that the management of the funds in the crime fund do not take place in the manner in which it is prescribed in the National Ordinance Criminal Fund, Criminaliteitsbestrijdingsfonds. And then it continues with, for example, the elucidation on the capital budget. It talks about the issue, apparently the government inserted an overview of subsidies, but there's no information in that overview. And then they were supposed to send an overview according to what is called the stat number 12, and according to what is mentioned here, that was empty. So I would like the minister to go over those matters in addition to the one regarding sharing COM decisions. And then the minister mentioned that the matter of the loans is now with the Eerste Kamer. do I understand this to be that they have been passed by the Tweede Kamer? Because for them to get Eerste Kamer, they would have had to been approved, it would have had to be approved by the Tweede Kamer. So did that happen? And then I would like the minister to explain what would be the consequences for the government of Sint Maarten if no discharge is granted by the parliament in any given year. So a discharge on the annual statements of government. I would like to hear from the minister on that, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Westcott Williams. Minister, you've received a few additional questions in the second round. 15? The minister's asked for 15 minutes. I will round it up a little bit because we also haven't even had a chance to take a bite, so we will go until 2 p.m., so it's about 23 minutes. We'll adjourn until 2 p.m. and return with the answers to the questions. Good afternoon once again, members of parliament, honorable minister, and those viewing. We are back in our public handling of the draft national ordinance establishing the annual accounts for Country Sint Maarten for the financial year 2021. We had concluded the questions from the second round from MP Westcott Williams, where the minister took some time to return with the answers. He is here now to answer the questions from MP Westcott Williams, who was the only person signed in from the second round. Minister, you have the floor.
Good afternoon again. In answering MP Westcott's question, the first answer is, I would like to clarify that your concerns pertain to the compliance aspect, which is compliance with the law, on which we receive an adverse opinion. We will explain some of these. However, when it comes to the height, and we were having a discussion on what a direct translation was, accuracy or the factual information, but in auditing in Dutch is getrouwheid of the financial statements, which relates to the matters such as accuracy, completeness. We did not receive an adverse opinion. In many instances, when it comes to compliance, if one article in the law is not followed, you are not compliant with the law. And in certain instances, we are dependent on external entities to be compliant. With regard to the subsidy ordinance, these are cases whereby institutions do not submit their financial statements timely to be able to execute the financial vaststelling. We are working together with the schools to improve this process. I'll give a deeper explanation. As we take a step back, again, this is a 2021 financial statement. We've already approved from 2013 to 2020 in Parliament. In each of those years, none of the governments dealt with these exact same matters. So these are not new matters. In this instance, we are dealing with this matter, Mr. Chairman. What we've realized is that schools, which fall for the majority of this 66 million, they apply following the ordinance, and that the final part, when it comes to the vaststelling, they don't comply with. And what we discussed, my staff and I discussed during the COVID period last year, we discussed the majority of the schools that we will take out a portion of their subsidy that they then pay towards auditing. Sometimes that portion does not even cover the auditor that they have, because they all have different auditors. And we will take out that portion, so decrease the subsidy a little bit, but then we would then handle all the audits for all of them. So then we have one unified approach to audits, and one auditor that deal with all of them the same way and be able to give the same advice. Again, that shows us taking the advice from the SOAB and audit chamber into consideration and fixing these problems. The report of the SOAB would then show the total amount for which we are not compliant. This does not mean that the information is not accurate. To address this matter, as I mentioned just now, oh no, that's the next topic now. With regard to the, yes. The next point that MP Westcott brought up was the addressing of the study loans as of the fourth quarter 2023. The loans will be signed off by myself, Minister of Finance, instead of the Minister of Education, given the fact that, as stated in the SOAB report, the Minister of Education does not have the authority to do such. Again, a simple matter that we have addressed, and again, was not addressed before. So again, showing that these are things that we are working on. We were able to do everything at the same time, given the 2 years that we were dealing with COVID and basically trying to keep the country afloat. But we are consistently and persistently addressing every single item that is a recommendation from the audit chamber and SOAB. The next one, the reason that economic permits are currently done on a cash basis instead of an accrual basis, as stated in the law, is because the database of the permits needs to be cleaned. Currently doing it on a cash basis provides the most realistic insight, which is also key for the financial statements. Once the database is cleaned, we can return to accrual basis. If accrual basis is now used, the financial statements will be more unrealistic, and for this reason, we have decided to use a cash basis, even though the law says accrual basis at this point. The financial statements provides a true and fair view. I must also state here that both ministries, RUMI and TIAT, are going over to more a digital system. I believe should be online very soon. So as we become more digital, a lot of these issues will be solved. In regards to the crime fund is currently one of the projects within the country packages whereby they are addressing this matter. When it comes to audit evidence, we are doing our best to receive and share the audit evidence with the auditors, and we will continue to do so. And I think in their statements also, they have also addressed our good cooperation and improvements. With regard to the stat 12, that relates to tax information which we cannot currently retrieve from the tax system. Once a new tax system is implemented, we will be able to easily retrieve this information and include it in our financial statements. The voting on the loans of investments has been approved by the Tweede Kamer and is scheduled to be voted on by the first chamber in September. Last, if no discharge is provided, the consequences will be that the legal process will have to start all over again. The financial statements have been audited already by the SRB and the audit chamber advised to provide a discharge. If no discharge is given, we will have to send it to the Council of Advice again for their review and provide them with the reason aspect why it was not passed, and will then come back to the Parliament again for the same voting, which will be very inefficient use of the public servants' time and that of the other entities. Mr. Chairman, I believe I have addressed all the questions from MP Sarah Scott Williams, and I look forward to, if needed, to any clarifications.
Thank you, Minister. I see MP Westcott Williams for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the Minister for addressing those few matters as a follow-up/clarification. Could the Minister repeat the part about the décharge, please? One. Did the Minister answer the issue about Tweede and Eerste Kamer? Okay, could you just let me know what that is? And yeah, just those two clarifications at this time.
So we had two clarifications. If you could repeat one of the answers, and there was one other clarification. Minister?
Yes, we were informed by the GEFMIN that it's at the voting at the Eerste Kamer in September. And regarding the discharge, if no discharge is provided, the consequences will be that the legal process will have to start all over again. The financial statements have been audited already by SWAB and the audit chamber, and the audit chamber advised to provide the discharge. If no discharge is given, we will have to send it again to the Council of Advice for their review and provide them with the reason or aspects why it was not passed, and it will then come back to Parliament again for voting, which will be very inefficient use of the public servants' time and that of the other entities.
Okay, I see no further need for clarification. So we have thus come to the end of the deliberations on this agenda point. According to Article 57 of the Rules of Order, we now go over to the voting on the draft national ordinance establishing the annual accounts of the country of Sint Maarten for the financial year 2021. We will vote on Articles 1 until 4, the title, the considerations, and the draft in its entirety. Does any member require roll call hoofdelijke stemming? Hoofdelijke stemming has been requested, so we will prepare that accordingly. We will start with number 8, and the Secretary General will call out the names. My apologies. Yes, I did have to go over to motivation first. So we will, do any members of parliament require the opportunity to motivate their vote? MP Peterson. You as well? Your mic is on. Peterson, your mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to keep it brief, I will not be supporting this law today, simply because when I read the report from the Algemene Rekenkamer, and I commend them for their work, it seems that there's a pattern within the last couple of years as to what the recommendations are and what we actually do. And at this point, in the summary of the report for this year, it basically says, the 2021 financial statements contain reliability errors and uncertainties. We conclude that the 2021 financial statements do not present a true and fair view of the financial position as of December 31st, 2021, or the income and expenses for 2021. And I think with that, given that the Algemene Rekenkamer is there to advise us as to how we have to vote, I will follow their advice and I will not be voting for this law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, MP Peterson. Any others to motivate? I see no need, so we go over to the voting.
MP George Pantoflet.
Voor.
MP Rayan Peterson. MP Hyacinth Richardson. MP Angelique Rameau. MP Ludmila De Weaver. MP Sarah Westcott Williams.
Against.
MP William Marlin. MP Akeem Arundel.
For.
MP Solange Duncan. MP Christophe Emmanuel. MP Melissa Gums.
For.
MP Grisha Heiliger Martin.
Against.
MP Rolando Bryson.
For. The result of the voting is 5 votes for, 5 against, so there is a stack on the stem. Therefore, we will have to recall another meeting, public meeting for the handling of this, where it will be voted on upon another time. The law has not been carried, but it is a 5-5 tied vote. So we will recall another public meeting to handle the voting, just to handle the voting on this particular piece of legislation. So this meeting, in terms of the deliberation, would be closed, but another public meeting will be called for the voting on this legislation. This agenda point, rephrase. This agenda point would be closed, as we would do another public meeting with this agenda point just for the voting on this legislation. Therefore, I close this agenda point and I will adjourn the meeting for 5. Actually, the Minister of VSA said he requires until 3 p.m. Therefore, I will adjourn the meeting until 3 p.m. and we will return with agenda point 2. Meeting adjourned.